They tried to turn HOA paperwork into ownership, until the law put my ranch back behind my gate. I came home one day early and found 12 luxury SUVs scattered across my hayfield, strangers photographing my barn, and a drone circling land I'd never offered for sale. Then Patty Reynolds, the HOA president, looked me straight in the eye and said I was the former owner. When I refused to leave my own ranch, she called 911. What Patty didn't know was that one missing page, one forgotten camera, and one county record were about to reveal why they needed my land so badly. If you enjoy stories where ordinary people stay calm, follow the evidence, and stand their ground the right way, subscribe and stay with me, because the ranch sale was only the beginning. I came home one day early and found 12 luxury SUVs parked in my hayfield. For a few seconds, I just sat behind the wheel of my pickup, staring through the windshield. A drone circled above the old timber barn. Strangers wandered between my horse stalls with phones raised, taking pictures. Two men in golf shirts stood near the fence, pointing toward Willow Reservoir. Then I saw the sign beside my wooden gate. Red Willow Ranch, private offering. Today only, my name is Ethan Cole. I'm 56 years old, and all 1,160 acres of Red Willow Ranch belong to me. So I had one question. Who the hell was selling my ranch? I'd finished a mountain drainage inspection a day ahead of schedule. Nobody expected me home until tomorrow. Apparently, that mattered. I drove through and stopped beside the barn. Conversations died as I stepped out. A woman carrying a brochure looked at me like I was interrupting something. Can I help you? You can start by telling me why you're standing on my property. Before she answered, Patricia Reynolds came around the barn. Everybody called her Patty. She was 50, president of Canyon Vista Estates, the 218-home HOA east of my ranch. She wore a cream jacket and carried a leather folder like she was arriving for a board meeting. Her face changed the instant she saw me. You weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow. That told me more than she intended. I pointed toward the vehicles. Get these people off my land. Her surprise disappeared. Ethan, don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. What's difficult about trespassing? This isn't trespassing. She opened her folder. The foreclosure process has already begun. Today's showing is authorized. I stared at her. Foreclosure on what? Red Willow Ranch. A couple standing near the barn stopped pretending not to listen. I stepped closer. Canyon Vista doesn't own this ranch. I'm not even in your HOA. Patty pulled out her phone. You've been notified. Notified of what? Instead of answering, she dialed 911. Her voice changed immediately. Calm, professional, injured. Yes, I'd like to report a disturbance at Red Willow Ranch. The former owner has entered that property and is interfering with an authorized foreclosure sale. Former owner. On my own land. I could feel every eye in that pasture turning toward me. I didn't shout, didn't touch her, didn't give her anything she could use. I said, tell them Ethan Cole is waiting. Sheriff Aaron Mitchell arrived 15 minutes later. He knew me. More importantly, he knew Red Willow Ranch. What happened, Ethan? Patty answered before I could. She handed him several pages. Canyon Vista has a recorded lien and foreclosure authorization. Mr. Cole is refusing to recognize the transfer process. Aaron frowned. Transfer to whom? The sale hasn't been completed. Then he's still the owner. Patty's jaw tightened. The association has enforcement rights. I went to my pickup and pulled a document folder from behind the seat. Here's my deed. Aaron compared my certified deed with Patty's paperwork. At first, I expected him to hand her documents back and tell everyone to leave. He didn't. He read them again. Then he looked at the recording numbers printed across the top. His expression changed. Everybody except Ethan needs to clear the property. Now. Patty protested. Sheriff, your showing is over. One by one, engines started. Tires pressed ugly tracks through my hayfield as the SUVs headed toward the gate. Patty was among the last to leave. She stopped beside me. "You stopped a showing, Ethan. That's all." Then she drove away. Aaron waited until her SUV disappeared down the county road. He held up her paperwork. "Your deed is valid. I'm not questioning that." "Then what's the problem?" He tapped one of the numbers. "This," I looked at it. Somebody actually recorded these claims with the county. For the first time that morning, my anger gave way to something colder. Canyon Vista had no authority over Red Willow Ranch, yet somewhere inside the county record system, somebody had created a paper trail saying they did. And if Patty Reynolds was confident enough to schedule a sale before I even knew about it, this hadn't started this morning. It had started long before I came home. The question was how far they'd already gone. By noon, I was sitting across from Daniel Brooks with my deed on one side of his desk and Patty's foreclosure papers on the other. Daniel had handled property disputes for nearly 30 years. He didn't scare easily, but after 20 minutes inside the county database, he stopped clicking. "This isn't a bluff, Ethan." He turned the monitor toward me. Canyon Vista had recorded years of supposed drainage maintenance assessments against Red Willow Ranch. Those assessments became a lien. The lien became a default claim, and somebody had used that default to start foreclosure proceedings. I stared at the numbers. I've never paid Canyon Vista because I've never belonged to Canyon Vista. I know. I never signed their covenants. I know that too. Then how can they assess my land? Daniel scrolled to the first filing. They're claiming this gives them authority. A scanned document appeared. Temporary construction and drainage license, 2004. I recognized my father's signature immediately. Years before Canyon Vista existed in its current form, the original developer needed temporary access across the eastern edge of our property while roads and drainage infrastructure were being built. My father had allowed it. Temporary access wasn't ownership, it wasn't HOA membership, and it sure wasn't permission to sell 1,160 acres. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. "Something's wrong." He opened the recording index. "What?" "The county index says the original instrument was 7 pages. He opened Patty's supporting exhibit. 6 pages. I counted them myself. 1 through 6, no 7th page. Daniel printed both records and placed them side by side. If page 7 limits or terminates this license, Patty's entire lien could collapse. Could. "We need the page." I was already standing. My father had kept every important ranch document in the office at Red Willow. If a complete copy still existed anywhere, it would be there. 40 minutes later, I unlocked the office and went straight to the old steel filing cabinet. Deeds, survey plats, water records, tax receipts. Then I reached the shelf where a brown property binder had sat for years, empty, not messy, not ransacked, empty. A clean rectangle showed through the dust. I checked every drawer anyway. Nothing. That binder contained the original 2004 development agreements. I called Daniel. "The binder's gone." There was a pause. "Anything else missing?" I looked around. Laptop still there. Survey equipment untouched. Cash envelope in the drawer. Even my father's old pocket watch sat where I'd left it. "No." Daniel's voice dropped. "Then don't touch anything else." I stared at that clean rectangle. Someone hadn't broken into my office looking for valuables. They had walked past everything worth stealing and taken one specific set of records. "Daniel, Patty showed up this morning with a 6-page copy." "I know, and the 7-page original disappears from my office?" "I know what you're thinking." "No, you know what I'm looking at." Silence. Then Daniel said, "Photograph the cabinet, photograph the room, call Sheriff Mitchell and document the missing binder. From this point forward, we build a record of everything." I took the first photograph. This morning I'd thought Patty Reynolds was trying to sell land she didn't own. Now the problem was worse. Somebody had manufactured a lien, started a foreclosure, and removed the one document that might prove they never had the authority to do any of it. One missing page had somehow become valuable enough to put my entire ranch at risk, and somebody already knew exactly where to look for it. Rachel arrived before sunset in her dusty pickup, carrying a laptop, rolled engineering plans, and the expression she got when numbers didn't add up. My daughter had spent years designing drainage systems and reviewing land development plans. I expected her to start with Patty's foreclosure documents. She didn't. Show me everything Canyon Vista has filed for Phase 3. Why? Because nobody goes through this much trouble over old maintenance fees. Daniel emailed the public planning records. Rachel spread the maps across my kitchen table. Canyon Vista Estates sat east of Red Willow Ranch. The existing 218 homes were marked in gray. Beyond them, Victor Lang's proposed Phase 3 climbed across the ridge. 94 new luxury homes. Rachel traced the stormwater system with one finger. Here's the problem. The proposed streets pushed runoff west. Under current county standards, Victor needed a legal outlet capable of handling the additional flow. Every practical route ended at the same place. My eastern boundary, a narrow line crossed Red Willow Ranch toward Clearwater Creek, 30 feet wide. I stared at it. Victor offered to buy that strip. Rachel looked up. When, months ago, said he needed utility access. I told him no. I hadn't needed an engineer to know what concentrated runoff could do. I'd spent years inspecting rights-of-way and drainage failures for the county. Push enough stormwater downhill, and somebody else's field becomes your detention basin. Rachel overlaid an older watershed map. The proposed outlet emptied toward Clearwater Creek upstream from Willow Reservoir. If they discharge here, she said, your hayfields take the first hit, then the creek bank. In a major storm, the reservoir gets the sediment. That was why I'd refused Victor. Laura and I had rebuilt our lives on this ranch. After I lost her, the place became more than acreage. It was the one thing grief hadn't taken with it. And Victor Lang had apparently decided my answer didn't matter. Rachel pulled Patty's 6-page 2004 license beside the development map. Dad, look, the temporary construction corridor followed almost the exact same 30-foot route Victor needed now. Suddenly, the pieces aligned, the old license. The missing page 7, the fake assessments, the lien, the foreclosure sale. They don't need the house, Rachel said. No, they need this corridor. I looked through the window toward the cottonwoods lining Clearwater Creek. If Victor could turn an expired construction license into a permanent property right, Phase 3 became possible. But that raised a worse question. If all he wants is 30 feet, I said, why take 1,160 acres? Rachel studied the foreclosure documents because you wouldn't sell 30 feet voluntarily. The answer landed hard. Victor didn't need to own Red Willow forever. He needed someone else controlling it long enough to establish the drainage right I had refused to give him. My phone rang. Daniel, I found the name of one witness on the original 2004 recording index. Who? Walter Hayes. I knew Walter. 72 years old, ranching west of Clearwater Creek, and one of the few men still alive who had known my father well, Daniel continued. If anybody remembers what was on page 7, it's probably him. I looked down at the red development line cutting across Rachel's map. For the first time, we knew what Victor wanted. Now we had to prove the document he was relying on had never given it to him. And Walter Hayes might be the last living person who could tell us exactly what page 7 said. Daniel and I found Walter the next morning repairing a fence along the western edge of his ranch. He listened without interrupting as Daniel explained the foreclosure, the 6-page copy, and the missing brown binder. Then Walter set his pliers down. 7 pages, he said. Daniel leaned forward. You're certain? I signed the 7th. That stopped both of us. Walter remembered the 2004 negotiations clearly. Canyon Vista's original developer needed a 30-foot corridor across my father's land, while roads, culverts, and storm drains were being built. They wanted a permanent easement, Walter said. Your father refused. What did he agree to? A temporary construction and drainage license, nothing more. Daniel opened his notebook. And page 7? Walter didn't hesitate. That was the termination language. My pulse kicked. He explained that my father had insisted the license end automatically when the county released Canyon Vista's construction bond. Walter had signed as a witness directly beneath that provision. So once construction was accepted by the county, I said, their right disappeared. That's what your father intended. Daniel corrected him carefully. Intent helps. Exact language is better. Walter nodded. Then find the page. We drove straight to the county records office. Daniel searched the development history while I watched the screen. There it was. Construction bond release. September 18, 2008, Daniel pointed at the date. If Walter is right, Canyon Vista's claimed access ended 18 years ago, which meant no continuing drainage right, no basis to classify my ranch as HOA property, no legitimate assessments, and potentially no lien. For the first time since I'd driven into my own sale, I felt the balance shift. Then Daniel requested the archived scan of the original 2004 license. Pages 1 through 6 loaded normally. Page 7 didn't. A gray box appeared. Image unavailable. Daniel tried again. Same result. The records clerk checked another terminal. Sometimes older scans are damaged. Can you pull the original? Daniel asked. She searched the instrument number, then shook her head. This series was transferred to Digital Archive years ago. I can submit a retrieval request, but I can't promise there's another accessible image. My hope tightened into suspicion. The original binder had vanished from my office. Patty's foreclosure relied on a 6-page copy, and now the county's easiest copy of the one page that could destroy her claim was unavailable. Daniel requested certified copies of the index, bond release, and every accessible page. Outside, I called Sheriff Mitchell and updated him. You think someone altered county records? He asked. I think somebody knew page 7 mattered before I did. That's not the same thing. I know. Aaron's voice stayed firm. Then don't accuse anybody yet. Give me evidence. That was exactly what Daniel had been saying. No threats, no guesses presented as facts. Build the record. Walter's testimony gave us a witness. The bond release gave us a date. The recording index proved page 7 had existed. But none of them gave Judge Rebecca Collins the actual language Patty and Victor were trying to bury. Daniel slid the certified records into his briefcase. We know their weakness now. I looked back through the courthouse doors. Knowing isn't proving. No, he said. And that's what they're counting on. We had finally found the legal hinge holding their foreclosure together. The problem was that the one page capable of breaking it was missing from my ranch and unavailable in the county system. Somebody believed that made them safe. Now we had to find the evidence they hadn't thought to remove. Daniel's first instruction was simple. Don't confront Patty. Don't call Victor. Let them believe page 7 is gone. That afternoon, Rachel and I went through the ranch office again. Sheriff Mitchell had already documented the missing binder, so we weren't searching for it anymore. We were looking for proof of who had taken it. The house cameras gave us nothing useful. Then Rachel stopped beside the window overlooking Willow Reservoir. The wildlife camera, I remembered immediately. 2 years earlier, we'd mounted a trail camera near the reservoir service road to track elk and check creek conditions after storms. It wasn't connected to the house, no Wi-Fi, no cloud account, just an SD card. We drove down to the cottonwoods. The camera was still strapped to an old trunk, half hidden behind leaves. Mud had dried across the bottom of the casing. Rachel pulled the card. Back at the kitchen table, we started scrolling. Deer, elk. A ranch truck, more deer. Weeks of almost nothing. Then Rachel froze the screen. Dad. The timestamp read 10:43 p.m., 3 weeks earlier. Headlights appeared on the service road. A white pickup rolled into frame. Canyon Vista Maintenance was printed across the door. My pulse climbed. The passenger side opened. Patty Reynolds stepped out. Then Victor Lang came around the other side. Neither of them belonged on Red Willow Ranch. The camera couldn't see the office entrance from its angle, but it caught them walking toward it. Rachel checked the next clip. Nothing. Then another. At 11:30 p.m., motion triggered the camera again. Victor came back first. He was carrying something against his chest. Rachel enlarged the frame, a brown binder. My brown binder. Patty followed him to the truck, looking back toward the ranch house before climbing inside. The pickup disappeared at 11:32. 47 minutes. I watched the sequence again, then a third time. No shouting, no confession, no dramatic mistake. Just two people entering my ranch after dark and leaving with the one set of records their foreclosure needed to disappear. Rachel whispered, "We've got them." "Entering the property," I said, "and carrying a binder." She understood immediately. The footage couldn't prove what was inside. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. He watched the clips without speaking, then copied the files to 2 separate drives. This changes the case, enough to stop the foreclosure, enough to ask much harder questions. He pointed at the screen. Victor has a financial interest in Phase 3. Patty is using an incomplete document to foreclose on the property, blocking his drainage corridor. Now we have both of them entering that property at night, and Victor leaves carrying something matching the missing records. So we confront them. No, Daniel's answer was immediate. We preserve the original card. Aaron gets a copy. Nobody tells Patty or Victor what this camera captured. Rachel frowned. Why? Because right now they think Ethan can't prove who took the binder. He looked at me. People get careless when they think they've removed the evidence. My phone buzzed on the table. A Canyon Vista notice had been posted online. Second foreclosure sale, Red Willow Ranch, 72 hours. Patty wasn't backing down. She was doing exactly what Daniel expected. I looked from the notice to the frozen image of Victor carrying my binder. For days, they'd controlled what I knew. Now we had something they didn't know existed. And for the first time, keeping quiet was more dangerous to them than confronting them. By morning, Patty had turned the second sale into a public statement. Canyon Vista posted that Red Willow Ranch would be offered again in 72 hours and described me as a disgruntled former owner obstructing a lawful foreclosure. Rachel read it from her phone. She wants you angry. Daniel didn't look up from the affidavit he was preparing. More than that. She wants Ethan angry in public. So I gave Patty nothing. No Facebook post, no interview, no drive over to Canyon Vista demanding answers. While she talked, we documented. Daniel built a timeline from the 2004 license through the false assessments and foreclosure filings. I signed an affidavit stating I'd never joined Canyon Vista, accepted its covenants, or authorized anyone to enter my ranch. Rachel prepared an engineering exhibit showing Victor's proposed 30-foot drainage outlet crossing my eastern boundary toward Clearwater Creek. Sheriff Mitchell took a forensic copy of the wildlife footage and the original SD card into evidence. When he watched Victor leave with the binder, his expression hardened. "This gives me grounds to investigate the entry," he said. "But Daniel's right. Don't tip them off. What about the sale? That's for the court." Daniel filed an emergency petition seeking to stop it. Then we waited. That was harder than confronting Patty. By afternoon, 2 more sale notices appeared near the county road. I removed the one attached to my gate and photographed it first. Across the top, foreclosed property. Public access by authorization only. I stood there longer than I should have. Laura and I had hung that gate together after we bought the ranch. Now somebody who'd never owned a fence post on Red Willow was labeling me an outsider. Rachel came up behind me. "Dad, I'm fine, I know." That was why she didn't say anything else. We went back inside. At 4:17, Daniel called. "I've got someone who wants to talk." "Who?" "Linda Parker, Canyon Vista treasurer." I knew the name but barely knew the woman. "What does she want?" "To make sure Patty doesn't know she's talking." That got my attention. Daniel put the call on speaker. Linda's voice came through low and careful. Mr. Cole, I need you to understand something. Those assessments didn't come through the normal process, Daniel asked. Explain. Patty told me to classify Red Willow Ranch as an accessible drainage parcel. Rach looked at me. When? Months ago. On what authority? Daniel asked. Linda hesitated. That's the problem. I asked her the same question. And? She told me the old drainage agreement was enough. Did you approve the classification? No. Silence filled the kitchen. Then Linda added, She went around me. Daniel leaned toward the phone. Can you prove she instructed you to do it? Another pause. Yes, I straightened. How? She emailed me. Daniel's eyes sharpened. Do you still have it? I kept everything. That was the first good news we'd had that didn't depend on a missing page. But Linda wasn't finished. You need to be careful, she said. Victor Lang knows somebody inside Canyon Vista is talking. Did he say that? No, Patty did. At a closed meeting this morning, Daniel asked the question that mattered. Linda, will you meet us? Her answer took several seconds, but not anywhere near Canyon Vista. The call ended. Patty thought she had 72 hours to finish taking my ranch. What she didn't know was that her own treasurer had kept the paper trail. And tomorrow, Linda Parker was going to show us exactly where it led. Linda chose a roadside diner 20 miles from Canyon Vista. She arrived alone, parked around back, and carried a plain envelope instead of a purse. Daniel and I were already in a corner booth. She didn't order coffee. I can't stay long. Daniel nodded toward the envelope. Then show us what you kept. Linda slid out printed emails, accounting notes, and copies of internal board correspondence. The first email was from Patty. Classify Red Willow as accessible drainage parcel effective immediately. Linda's reply was underneath. Please provide covenant or recorded authority. Daddy never did. Instead, another email appeared 2 days later. Proceed under the 2004 drainage instrument. Daniel circled the date. This was before the first lien filing. Linda nodded. I refused to certify the assessments. Patty started handling the account herself. Why? I asked. Linda pulled out another page. This one came from Victor Lang. It discussed funding new drainage improvements inside Canyon Vista after the coal corridor was resolved. Rachel had been right. The foreclosure wasn't about unpaid dues. It was about Phase 3. Daniel read the email twice. Did Victor ever attend HOA meetings? Closed sessions. Patty called him a development consultant. Was he paying Canyon Vista? Linda hesitated. He promised substantial infrastructure funding once the corridor issue was settled. There it was. Money tied to access. Access tied to my land. But Linda had saved something worse. She pushed one final email toward Daniel. Patty had written it. Can the 2004 license be treated as continuing if the termination page cannot be located? For several seconds, nobody spoke. I read it again. Not if there was no termination page. If the termination page couldn't be located, Patty knew it existed. Daniel's voice became very quiet. When was this sent? 6 weeks before the foreclosure paperwork. That changed everything. The missing 7th page was no longer just a damaged scan or a forgotten attachment. Patty had discussed its disappearance before using the incomplete agreement to claim authority over my ranch. Who else received this? Daniel asked. Victor. Anyone else? Me. Did you answer? I told her we needed a complete recorded instrument before taking action. What happened? She told me I was being obstructionist. Linda looked down at her hands. After that, I was excluded from meetings. She threatened to have me removed as treasurer if I kept questioning the assessments. I understood why she'd waited. Standing up inside an organization was easy to recommend when you weren't the person being isolated. You came now, I said. She met my eyes. I should have come sooner. You came with evidence. That's what matters. Daniel collected the pages carefully. Will you sign an affidavit? Linda took a breath. Yes. Before leaving, she stopped beside the booth. There's something else. Daniel looked up. Patty kept telling the board not to worry about the original. Why? Linda's answer landed harder than anything else she'd shown us. She said the county didn't have another complete copy. I watched her walk out. Victor had taken my binder. The county's electronic page 7 was unavailable. And Patty had known about the termination clause before filing the foreclosure. They hadn't built their case because they believed the old license was permanent. They had built it because they believed the evidence proving it wasn't permanent had disappeared. Daniel gathered Linda's emails. They think page 7 is dead. I looked at the 6-page agreement. Then let's hope they're wrong, because if another certified copy existed anywhere, Patty Reynolds had just given us the evidence showing she knew exactly why it mattered. Judge Rebecca Collins scheduled our emergency hearing for the morning of Patty's second foreclosure sale. By 9, Daniel and I were inside the district courthouse. Rachel sat behind us with the drainage maps. Walter Hayes waited near the aisle. Linda had signed her affidavit, but Daniel held her emails back. He wanted Patty and Victor committed to their story first. Patty entered with Victor and their attorney. She didn't look worried. Why would she? The original binder was gone. The county scan of page 7 was unavailable. And outside the courthouse, their sale was still scheduled for that afternoon. Judge Collins took the bench. Canyon Vista claims authority to assess and foreclose upon Red Willow Ranch. Show me the recorded instrument creating that authority. Their attorney handed her the 6-page 2004 license. He argued Canyon Vista had inherited continuing drainage rights and that my refusal to pay maintenance assessments justified the lien. Daniel stood. Does the association possess the complete 7-page instrument? No. Then they're asking this court to enforce rights based on an incomplete document. Their attorney countered that nothing proved the missing page changed the agreement. Judge Collins looked at Daniel. Do you have the 7th page? Not yet, Your Honor. Patty's mouth tightened into the smallest smile. Then Victor testified. He described Phase 3 as a separate project with no connection to my foreclosure. Daniel approached him. Does Phase 3 require drainage across Red Willow Ranch? Our engineers are evaluating multiple options. Have you personally attempted to obtain access across Mr. Cole's property? I made a preliminary offer months ago, and after he refused, we moved on. Daniel paused. Have you ever entered Red Willow Ranch without Ethan Cole's permission? Victor looked directly at him. No. Have you ever entered Mr. Cole's ranch office? No. Have you ever removed documents or other property from that office? Victor's attorney shifted. Victor didn't. Absolutely not. Daniel nodded. Thank you. Then he sat down. Patty glanced at Victor as if they'd survived the dangerous part. Daniel waited until the judge finished making a note. Then he stood again. Your Honor, I'd like to offer Exhibit 12. Their attorney rose. What is it? Video. What is? The original wildlife camera SD card had already been authenticated through Sheriff Mitchell's evidence process. Daniel played the copy. The courtroom monitor showed the Reservoir Service Road, 4:43 p.m. A Canyon Vista maintenance pickup entered the frame. Patty stepped out, then Victor. Nobody moved. The next clip appeared, 1:30 p.m. Victor walked back toward the truck carrying the brown binder against his chest. Patty followed. 32. The truck disappeared. Daniel stopped the video. The room was silent, not dramatic silence. The uncomfortable kind that comes when everyone has just watched a sworn statement collapse. Judge Collins looked at Victor. Mr. Lang, you testified less than 5 minutes ago that you had never entered Red Willow Ranch. Victor's attorney stood. Your Honor, we request a recess. Judge Collins ignored him for a moment. Her eyes stayed on Victor. Then she turned to Daniel. Mr. Brooks, does this footage establish what was inside that binder? No, Your Honor. Then we still have 2 separate questions. Possible unauthorized entry is one. The legal validity of this foreclosure is another. She tapped the incomplete agreement. For the second question, I need to know what page 7 actually says. Victor's credibility was gone. Patty's confidence had cracked. But they still had one defense left. The page that could destroy their entire foreclosure was still missing. And unless we could put it in Judge Collins's hands, exposing their lie might not be enough to save the ranch. Patty's attorney seized on that immediately. Your Honor, Mr. Brooks has shown footage relevant to a separate allegation. He has not shown that Canyon Vista's recorded drainage rights terminated. Daniel remained standing. Walter Hayes had testified about the termination clause. We had the 2008 bond release. Linda's email proved Patty knew a termination page existed. But Patty's attorney kept returning to one point. Where is the document? Judge Collins looked toward Daniel. Before he answered, the courtroom door opened. Michael Turner, the county surveyor, walked in carrying a gray archive box. Daniel's expression told me he'd been waiting for him. Michael took the witness stand and placed the box beside him. County property records aren't the only department that retained documents from Canyon Vista's original construction, he explained. Patty stopped writing. Michael continued. When the development's construction bond was released in 2008, county engineering created a completion file. That file contains drainage inspections, final plans, bond documents, and certified duplicates of instruments governing temporary construction access. Daniel asked, including the 2004 license affecting Red Willow Ranch? Yes. Michael opened the box. 7 pages came out. Not 6. 7. Patty's attorney stood. We need time to authenticate. They're certified county records, Michael said. Judge Collins examined the seal herself. Then Daniel handed Michael the final page. Please read the relevant provision. Michael did. The license terminated automatically upon final release of the developer's construction bond. It created no permanent easement, no covenant, no successor ownership interest, and no continuing assessment authority over Red Willow Ranch. The room went still again. Daniel placed the certified 2008 bond release beside page 7. Release date, Michael answered, September 18, 2008. Daniel turned toward the judge. Canyon Vista's temporary right ended that day. Patty leaned toward her attorney, whispering urgently. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. No continuing license means no authority to assess Ethan Cole's ranch. No valid assessments means no valid lien. No valid lien means no foreclosure. He paused. And no foreclosure means there was never any legal authority to sell Red Willow Ranch. 4 steps, their entire case collapsed in less than a minute. Judge Collins reviewed the documents before looking directly at Patty's table. The foreclosure is void. Patty went pale. The scheduled sale is prohibited. Canyon Vista Estates and Lang Development are restrained from asserting property or drainage rights under the terminated 2004 license pending further order. Patty stood. Your Honor, we were protecting the community. Judge Collins cut her off. You were attempting to sell property your association never owned. Nothing Patty could say after that mattered. The judge ordered the lien removed and directed that the wildlife footage, Linda's affidavit, internal emails, and evidence concerning the missing binder be referred to Sheriff Mitchell and the appropriate county authorities. Out the courtroom, Daniel handed me a certified copy of page 7. I held it for a moment. 1 sheet of paper, that was all. For days, Patty and Victor had acted as though removing it could change history. It couldn't. Red Willow Ranch was safe. But the case had just changed. We had walked into court trying to stop a foreclosure. We walked out with evidence that someone had knowingly built that foreclosure on a right that expired 18 years earlier. And now Sheriff Mitchell wasn't investigating an HOA dispute anymore. 3 days later, Aaron called. We found your binder. A search warrant had taken deputies into Canyon Vista's management office. Inside a locked records cabinet sat the brown binder Victor had carried away from my ranch. His 7 was still inside. So were copies of emails between Patty and Victor discussing Phase 3, the drainage corridor, and the foreclosure timeline. They hadn't misunderstood the agreement. They had tried to work around it. The consequences came quickly. Canyon Vista's board removed Patty as president. The county suspended Victor's Phase 3 application, while investigators reviewed the filings and communications tied to Lang development. Evidence involving the false lien, the missing records, and the nighttime entry was referred for possible prosecution. Linda stayed long enough to help the homeowners untangle the mess, then stepped down voluntarily. The people of Canyon Vista didn't dissolve their HOA. They did something more sensible. They elected a new board and ordered a full review of every property claim Patty's administration had made. Daniel called that the better outcome. An association isn't the problem, he said. People pretending its authority has no boundary are. I agreed. Victor had another problem. Without my 30-foot corridor, his original Phase 3 drainage plan couldn't move forward. Rachel later showed me the redesign. Instead of sending stormwater across Red Willow Ranch toward Clearwater Creek, Lang Development would have to build an expensive detention system entirely on property Victor legally controlled. 94 luxury homes had suddenly become a much harder calculation. Not my problem. The lien against Red Willow was formally removed. The foreclosure disappeared with it. The private offering sign never came back. Weeks passed before the ranch felt normal again. SUV tracks faded from the hayfield. The horses stopped raising their heads every time a vehicle slowed near the gate. The old office cabinet held my brown binder again. But now I kept certified copies of page 7 in 3 different places. One evening, Rachel and I walked down toward Willow Reservoir. The water caught the last light beyond the cottonwoods. Behind us stood the timber barn, the fences, and the ranch house Laura and I had once believed we'd grow old in together. For a while, Rachel said nothing. Neither did I. I'd spent most of my life around land records, drainage maps, easements, and rights of way. I knew paper mattered. What Patty had counted on was something different. She thought authority printed on HOA letterhead would be enough to make a lie feel official. She thought if the right page disappeared, the truth disappeared with it. It didn't. Rachel looked across the reservoir. Think they'll ever try again? I glanced east towards Canyon Vista. They can ask. We walked back to the wooden gate. I swung it closed and dropped the latch into place. They just don't get to take. There was no celebration waiting for me. No victory banner. Just 1,160 acres still belonging to the person who had owned them before any of this started. That was enough. Patty had tried to turn paperwork into ownership. We turned the truth back into law, and Red Willow Ranch remained exactly where it belonged, behind Ethan Cole's gate.
If Ethan's story leaves us with one lesson, it's this: when somebody puts official-looking paperwork in front of you, don't assume the letterhead makes it true. Ethan didn't protect his brand by shouting louder than the HOA. He protected it by slowing down, keeping records, finding witnesses, reserving evidence, and letting the actual documents speak. One missing page nearly changed everything, but the truth still existed in county archives, in water memory, in Linda emails, and on a wildlife camera nobody talked about. There's a quiet kind of trance in standing your ground without losing your judgment. Property can carry years of work, family memories, and sacrifice that nobody sees from the other side of fence. Protecting it doesn't require bitterness. Sometimes it simply requires patience, good people beside you, and the willingness to insist that truth applies to everyone. If you ever had to defend your home, your land, or simply your rights when someone pushed too far, type yes in the comments. And if you ever deal with an HOA situation of your own, share what happened. Someone reading may recognize a lesson they need someday. And if story about ordinary people protecting what their work for means something to you, subscribe and stay with us. We've got more HOA, rent land, and property story ahead, story about dignity, perseverance, and knowing when you calmly close the ray and say, this is where the line is.